times. At Sunway University, we always want to be there with you. To be that whisper, that moment of appreciation, and to share your dream. At Sunway University, we understand your vision. Let your passion and dedication realize that dream and inspire the next generation. Sunway University, truly a class above.
Science plays a vital role for economic development and societal well-being. Understanding this, the Academy of Sciences Malaysia was established with a mission to be Malaysia's thought leader in all areas of science, technology, and innovation. To realize its mission, ASM harnesses the nation's top scientific minds to chart the STI direction and facilitates the implementation of an innovation-led economy for the country. ASM's commitment lies firmly in fostering a culture of excellence in STI in Malaysia. ASM does this by providing independent, credible, relevant and timely STI input of national and international importance to the country. Our network of expertise comprises Malaysian scientists, engineers, and technologists who specialize in various disciplines. The Academy assists in upgrading the nation's technological capabilities in the industrial sectors by producing high-quality publications such as peer-reviewed journals, monographs, and books. In addition, ASM also provides input on current and future technology trends to be considered and taken up by the government in driving the nation's economy forward. To provide Malaysian scientists with the best opportunities and exposure, ASM actively extends its international networks and collaborations. It currently has a range of multilateral engagements with renowned scientific institutions worldwide. The Academy also champions the need to grow the right talent in STI by cultivating interests in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to the younger generation. In short, the Academy's ethos is proudly defined as Think Science, Celebrate Technology, Inspire Innovation.
Armstrong, Hawking, Ma, Rowling, Malala, Gandhi. The movers and shakers of our lifetime didn't begin by seeking recognition. Instead, they struggled for a cause, sparked by an inspiration, which grew into a passion, driven by great determination, often supported by a special factor or guidance from an unexpected source, like that whisper of encouragement, a moment of genuine appreciation, or that dream that you woke up from too soon. Whilst we do not know where that next inspiration will come from, what we do know is that during these unprecedented times, at Sunway University, we always want to be there with you, to be that whisper, that moment of appreciation, and to share your dream. At Sunway University, we understand your vision. Let your passion and dedication realize that dream and inspire the next generation. Sunway University, truly a class above.
One.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon for those attending in Malaysia, and good morning and good evening from what place you are joining us today. Welcome to this panel session on green energy for the tropics. I am Muhammad Khairuddin Arwa from Sanwa University, and I am happy and honored to be the moderator for this session. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizing committee for inviting me to host this session, and also I would like to congratulate the organizer for the successful organization of this event under the leadership of Professor Mazlan. In this session, we are going to focus on the green energy in the tropics. We have with us three distinguished speakers, Professor Yasuki Ikari from Japan, Professor Shaharin Anwar Sulaiman from Malaysia, Professor Abu Bakr Sani Sambo from Nigeria, who are here together with us to share their vast experience and expertise, and also their thoughts and knowledge around the challenges facing the tropical countries when it comes to adopt renewable energy. Of course, they are highlighting the challenges, but of course with challenges comes opportunity and benefits. These benefits can be social, health, and economic benefits, and we will discuss this later after the three presentation. As you know, the transition to renewable energy is recognized as one of the critical strategies addressing the climate emergency. And especially in the tropics, it is important to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals related to climate change, as well as affordable energy and clean energy. Without further ado, allow me to introduce our first speaker today, Professor Yasuki Ikigami. So he's currently has over 26 years research experience at Saga University in the field of ocean thermal energy conversion. Recently, he has been investigating an OTEC system using ammonia water mixture as working fluid. He has collaborated on the project with several countries, including the Republic of Palau, India, and Korea. He is a special field in energy conversion engineering, thermodynamic engineering, and heat transfer. He has served as visiting professor at Duke University and deputy director at the Institute of Ocean Energy at Saga University, Japan. He is the recipient of numerous awards, including the Akiyama Award by the Japan Society of Mechanical Engineers and the Global 100 Eco-Tech Award. He is a member of several organizations, including the Japan Solar Energy Society, the Heat Transfer Society of Japan, and the Japan Society of Energy and Resources. He is currently the leader of the Ocean Thermal Energy Conversion Division at the Institute of Ocean Energy and Saga University, Japan. So I give the floor to Prof. Yasuki to share with us his experience in this very emerging technology for renewable energy.
Thank you for introduction. Can I start?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'm very happy to have this opportunity. I'm very honored. So I would like to present the potential of OTEC for the tropics. So for sustainable energy and water, sustainable stable electricity 24 hours as a renewable energy. So in this my presentation, please recognize Tropics has a #1 potential of OTEC in the world. So next. This map is drawn by IEA, OES, IEA, International Energy Agency, shows the OTEC activities. So this red color is a high potential, and the next orange and yellow. So this Tropics Island has a high potential in the world. And the many OTEC projects now progress in Tropics area. So of course, Hawaii or Caribbean or Malaysia or Africa or Australia, so on, India also. So please don't forget the Tropics has a high potential in the world. Next. In Japan now operating the OTEC. This plant is a Kumejima OTEC plant we called world first OTEC demonstration in the second boom. So 100 kilowatt already connected to power grid. 5 years operation continuously. Next. So also Malaysia has a high potential. This map is drawn by surprised by the Abu Bakar professor. So this Malaysia or high potential in Sabah state. Next. So Japanese government and Malaysian government started TropSc project. So Japan side leader, Sabah University, Malaysia leader, UTM. So Professor Dr. Bakar, so he's leader of this TropSc project. This project promotes the OTEC in first is Malaysia, then contributed in the world to solve the environment energy issues. Next. So this is the project grouping, Saga University, and right side UTM, UPM, UN, UKM, so also. Next. So already constructed advanced OTEC system in Japan. So within next year, we will transfer from the Japan to the Malaysia. Next. Next. Next, please. So UTM has constructed OTEC previous. Malaysia now designed the OTEC center and the UPM and UTM. Next. So this OTEC center and the new OTEC system installed the Port Dickson in Malaysia. Next. Also another international program, so ongoing project and proposal of OTEC in Nauru, Republic of Nauru. So this project supported the UN, UNIDO. So Japan team is this pre-feasibility studies. This pre-feasibility study supported by UNIDO. After pre-feasibility study, Nauru government and Japan side, so promoting OTEC in the Nauru, then Pacific Island, Tropics Island. Next. So 40 years ago, Nauru challenged the OTEC. Next. So previous. So Nauru challenged the OTEC. So this project re-challenged the new project 1 megawatt. Next. What is the OTEC? Next. So 30 or 40 years ago, challenge the OTEC. Next. After oil shock. So evaluate this 1980s. So OTEC is technical feasible but not economical. Next. Recently, next. A spotlight again due to technical improvement and challenges in social situation. Next. So OTEC now success the new challenging. Next. So this is an international patent on OTEC. So after oil crisis, first boom. but oil price down, so OTEC project is slow. But recently, a second boom. Japan is a high potential activities. Next, US, but recently China and Korea very strongly progress. Next. So now in the world, many projects, US and Netherlands, Malaysia, India, Korea, French. So unfortunately, I cannot introduce in this time because time is limited. Next. One of the project I would like to explain. This is a US project, 10 megawatt, 15. This is size 55 meter times 55 meter. If you install the solar, you need the 100 times area. OTEC is very compact. Next. This is the new intake tube, the 4 meter, already developed. Next. So US and Japan and now propose hydrogen and ammonia production using ocean thermal energy on the floating. Next. Next. So this is the roadmap for the commercialize. Now 100 kilowatts, next 1 mega, 10 mega. US just started the 10 mega class. Finally, we are 100 megawatt commercialized plant. Next. So why now in OTEC, Tropics and the world? Next. So one reason, recently technology improvement. Next. And stable energy, 24 hours stable. So solar and wind is not stable, but OTEC is 24 hours, one year stable. Next. So Tropics island area has a stable energy and huge energy. Don't forget. Next. This is the principle of the OTEC. OTEC is a concept similar to the fossil power plant, but not to use the fossil, not emission the coal, only temperature difference, warm CO2 and cold CO2. Using make a vapor, then turbine rotaries generated, then this vapor go to the condenser, then return to the liquid. Next. OTEC is using temperature profile. This is a temperature profile, Jamaica, Fiji, Palau, Maldives, and Mauritius. So this profile is very important, warm CO2 and cold CO2. So we at least 20 degrees centigrade we needed for the economical OTEC. Next. So this reason why OTEC climate changed and environment economic cost. So OTEC is a good option for increasing power supplies in the clean and renewable manner. Next. So Kumejima in Japan now proposed the 1 megawatt OTEC recently, just from this year started. So then finally 100% supplies from the renewable energies. Next. Target by 2040. This is now Kumejima using diesel and solar. Maximum 6,000 kilowatts. Next, only diesel and solar now. Next, 2025, so 1 megawatt OTEC installed, and diesel and solar and some battery. Next. So finally, left side mid 2025, right side, so all 6 megawatt OTEC installed, 100% renewable energy. Proposed Tropics implementation. So first 24 hours renewable, 1 megawatt OTEC, 1 or 2 mega. Next 3 or 4 megawatt, so 100 renewable. Next. So this technology changing offshore industry and heat exchanger and some equipment. So Saga University and some company, Japanese company develops a high performance heat exchanger and floating. Next. So Kumejima before the OTEC, before the deep sea water application, so sugar canes industries, most high industries in Kumejima. Kumejima is a 7,000 island peoples, but recently twice new industries, so using deep sea water application. Deep sea water door enabling industry and technology and become ever more need established and commercialized around in year. Deep sea water very important. Tropics island, tropics area has a deep sea water. Next. So now we are proposed intake pipe is supplies the public. Next, OTEC and deep sea water application industries, private sector using this deep sea water. Deep sea water including rich nutrient and cooling water, so decreasing the cooler electricity. Next. So Kumejima now proposed 1 megawatt of tech just from year started, 1 megawatt of tech under new industry, shrimp, clam, sea grape, offshore oyster, onshore oyster, desalination, and lithium extraction from the water and biomass. Because new deep sea water very cool and new rich nutrient for the fish and agriculture. Next. So this is already progress new industries in Kumejima. Only difference. Next. Deep sea water. Next. So sea grape and cosmetic. Now cosmetic industries using deep sea water and 30 million US dollar industry. Sea grape 10 million US dollar industries. Now target. Next. This table comparative study for the selection of the renewable energy in the introduction focus on the install for the tropics island. Solar and onshore wind, offshore wind, wave, tidal, OTEC. So some items, so we are compare the each renewable energy. So some item solar is good, and some item solar is poor performance because solar is very needed, very large area needed, but OTEC is a very compact, and OTEC is a creative job and so on. Next. Sorry, limited time, I cannot explain. So finally, if a tropic aiming for the 100 renewable energy strategy combination and for the OTEC and solar power generation in effective the SDGs achievement in tropics. Next. So meets tropics needs the water, seawater energy saving, food. Next. So OTEC electric cost finally 4 or 8 cents per kilowatt hour. But small OTEC is not economically. Next. This is a commercial plant. Now good progress. Next. So OTEC is contributed not only 1 or 4. All SDGs goals contributed. This map, this table supplied by the Abu Bakr. Next. Datu Abu Bakr. Next. So finally, OTEC is a sustainable power supply from the tropics with Malaysia and Japan also. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Yasuyuki, for your presentation. We will go for our next speaker. the question, we will take the question at the end of the three talks. Huh? So our next speaker is Professor Shaharin Anwar Sulaiman from the Department of Mechanical Engineering, University of Technology Petronas, Malaysia. He holds a bachelor and a master and a PhD degree in mechanical engineering. He was a mechanical engineer in YTL Corporation prior to joining academics. At UTP, he was director of mission-oriented research group for hybrid energy systems from 2009 to 2017. His research interests include air conditioning, biomass energy, solar photovoltaic, combustion and flow assurance. He has published more than 190 journal articles and 15 books on various engineering research topics. One of his latest books is The Clean Energy Opportunity in the Tropics countries, and today he's going to talk about green energy opportunities in tropical countries. So, Prof. Shahari, please go ahead.
Thank you, Prof. Muhammad Khairuddin. Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Shaharin Sulaiman. I'm from University
Salam.
of in Malaysia. We are about 2 hours to the north of Kuala Lumpur. So my topic today is clean energy opportunities in tropical countries. Let's see the next page. Actually, this topic comes from the book that I have published together with a few colleagues. Actually, it's not really my area. My area of research is biomass, gasification, and also combustion. However, I have interest in the bigger area of energy, and due to that, we published this book. So in this book, if you are interested, you can look for it in the link given. But the topic that I am going to present today roughly is around introduction, demography, and then we'll look into energy demand, environmental problems, resources, and also finally the scenarios of the present days as well as challenges. Let's look at the. I'll try to move fast because we're running out of time. Okay, when we talk about tropical countries, you can view it in many ways. Generally speaking, geographically, the tropical areas lies between, if you can see on my text here somewhere in the map, between 23 degree north and 23 degree south. Okay? However, if you scrutinize carefully, it comprises of so many things. You have rainforest, you have tropical monsoon, savanna, even desert, and some places there are snows. So you can be viewing it in different ways. In the book that I have published, I leave it open. So I would say, let's leave it to the 23 degree north and south. And in fact, we can include also the subtropics. I forgot the number, the latitude by now, but it's quite a big area. And I put a note there that when you talk about tropics, it's about 40% of Earth's surface area, which is very, very big. And in terms of vegetation, as you can see in the slide and in the photo, we can divide them generally by 3 areas: tropical rainforest, tropical monsoon, and savanna. I do not wish to elaborate in detail because we're not in the geography class. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, and in general, we can say that this area is well known for its hot and humid weather and plenty of rain. Okay, and if we look at the demography and social economy, it's something unique. Look at the point there: 50% of the world population comes from this area by 2050. Presently, China is the highest in terms of largest population in the world. But soon, 2027, we're going to see India to become the largest population. And in terms of number of countries, there are 90 countries. And this is something important also. Most of the countries or the governments in this area are young government. In other words, they only recently achieved their independence. Most of them 100 years or less, yeah? Like Malaysia, only 60 years. And therefore, most of them are developing countries. And if you look in the box in the middle there with the red text, only out of the 90 countries, only Hong Kong, Singapore, and Australia are recognized as developed countries. The rest are still developing. Fortunately, we have fast growth in some countries. You look at the down there, newly industrialized countries, NIC. They include China, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Mexico, the Philippines, South Africa, and Thailand. We hope they will excel and can be at par with other developed countries. And the last point there, if we list all the countries in the world in terms of GDP, the top 20 are coming from the tropics. Strangely, the bottom 20 also come from the tropics. And so it's a mix of we call that variety in terms of when we want to look into the tropics. And on the photos there, is there anything there? Okay, some of the countries within these tropics are landlocked, I mean they don't have access to sea. And in general, we can say that these countries are poor, okay? And then we need to also be reminded that the communism fell into 1990, 1989, quite new. And due to this, some of the countries, communist countries have been developing very, very fast. A good example is China, after they have left communism, not really left, but they are open to the, for that global market. They are more developed, growing very, very fast. Okay? And we know also that not all, majority of the countries within the tropics have many problems. I think that makes sense because they are young government, and there are so many problems such as corruption, water problems, traffic, environment especially, energy, right? Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, and we need to also be aware that in the last 10 to 50 years, there have been many things going on in the world. I think the most recent one is information technology, where we can see that things that you look in the last 15, 20 years are not the same anymore, right? The way we take taxi, with Uber, the way we get information. During the time when I was young, the government can keep secret for some incident. Now no more. Within minutes, you can know things going on. So transparency is very, very obvious nowadays. So the way people govern things are different, and in terms of business, it's becoming more competitive. Right? So I would say the opportunities for everybody to become rich or to become prosper is open to almost everybody, as long as you have the right resources and right people. And this is not the same if we look back 20, 30, 40 years ago. And in terms of, look at the middle column there, air conditioning, that is another beauty. The tropics is a nightmare for people from temperate countries. I used to study in England for like 4 years, and I came back for about 2 weeks. I had to take a bath for 5 days, 5 times a day, because it's very humid. I'm not used to it. And thankfully, we've got air conditioning. Okay, it has helped a lot in the way we work. Okay, if we read history, okay, the British, for example, in Malaya, they label people as lazy. Actually, the condition in our country is so humid. If we bring them here, they will give up because it's not bearable to work. But with the air conditioning, it's something different. Even Lee Kuan Yew, the late Prime Minister of Singapore, he admitted in about 1960s. He said, "Well, the first thing I did when I was in the government was to make all the government buildings, government offices, equip them with air conditioning, because that is very, very vital in ensuring productivity of the workers." Okay, the last column there is about R&D, something that I would like to highlight. That R&D is very important nowadays. However, despite the tropics are prospering very well, we are very slow in R&D. Okay, I put point there that our R&D is about 4 times smaller than the rest of the world. Okay? So that is something that we need to take note. Let's move on, please. Next slide. Yeah, okay. I think I can skip this slide. In general, I can say that everybody wants to grow. Okay, we look at our neighbors. Everybody wants to grow, and when we grow, the demand for energy increases, and other problems came along, right? Especially environmental problems. Let's move on. Next. We have about 6 minutes. This slide, maybe I can say in one sentence. We can say that the projected increase in energy consumption up to 2050 goes to tropical countries. So you may ask why not EU and USA? You know? Actually, they have become more aware on the problem, and they have been doing a lot to reduce their energy consumption, to make it more efficient, while we are like hungry people, okay, growing very fast, okay, and that is why we are seeing tremendous growth in terms of energy demand. Of course, this come along with growth in industrialization and other things, okay. And if we look at ASEAN, the histogram shows how it looks like. Remember, the landlocked countries, Laos is one of them, is one of the poorest among us in ASEAN. But this is not a good way to look at it. As you can see in the bottom right of the text there, the highest energy consumption per capita comes to Singapore. Okay, next slide, please. 4 minutes left. Okay, this is something that I got from, not really got, I extract from IEA, and I built my own pie chart when I developed the book. Randomly pick countries within tropics, distribute them by energy consumption, not mistaken, consumption. There are many mix of stories here. And interestingly, if you look at Singapore, bottom right, Singapore has the largest consumption of energy in terms of non-energy use. Why is that? That is actually refinery of petrol to become the refined fuel for retail sale. Right? Don't be surprised. Actually, Singapore is one of the largest producer of refined petrol, although Singapore has no oil and gas production. Okay, there is something. And next to it, the left of Singapore is Malaysia. There's something strange about Malaysia. If you look at the bottom pie of the chart, the brown color, 41% goes to transportation. Of all these charts, Malaysia had the largest. There's something that we can further investigate. Okay, but my guess is probably because our past prime ministers promote the growth of local, what we call that, automotive. We have our own cars. We have 2 companies. We have our own motorbikes. And the best of all, not to say the best, the biggest thing that we promote this thing is the price of fuel, which is very low in Malaysia, resulting in our people to be using it more than other people. Probably. This is my guess. And if we look at the top pie chart there, Ethiopia and Nigeria, they have a very big chunk of the pie for residential. I also don't know why, but probably it gives a sign that maybe not much industry is going on there, and therefore people, when you divide, we call that the statistics, it end up that most of the energy goes to the residential. Okay, let's move on. I have 2 minutes. Okay, we have growth in energy demand. We also have environmental problem. I do not have to elaborate long. We know that there is a Paris Agreement. Okay, the result of this comes from, or the motivation comes from the release of greenhouse gases, where we are seeing increase in global temperature, which result in melting of ice, flooding, more hurricanes, more desert, and migration. Look at the map that I'm showing to you there. This is somewhere in Malaysia, and my place is somewhere at the bottom of the map, out of the map. And from the coast to the to the lake. If you can see, that's a lake in the middle of the map. It's about 25 kilometers. Okay? The red shade shows the area that will be flooded by 2050 if nothing is done adequately. Done is nothing. Done adequately. If we don't do it adequately, we will get flood. Okay. Some part of the highways, important highways of Malaysia will be flooded. Okay, let's move on. I think, yeah, I choose not to explain that. Maybe later. Huh? Next. I have less than 1 minute now. This is the emission by all the major contributors from tropical countries. This is the growth in terms of environment in tropical countries. Okay, let's move on. Skip. Not enough time. Skip. These are the variety of power generation mechanisms. Next, please. This slide shows the potential of solar PV in tropical countries, where you can see in the middle area there, plenty of red and orange colors. Let's move on. My point is it's abundant. Solar energy is abundant in Malaysia, in tropical countries. Wind energy is getting popular, but in the middle area is not very strong. Okay, next, please. Biomass, we are strong in biomass, tropical countries, because of the good rain. Next, please. Time ended already. Okay, this is an important slide showing the present price or cost of operating different types of power generation. And this comes from IEA. I know from different sources, you may have different chart. Solar PV is the lowest at the moment. That's something that should shake the head of many governments. Why are we not doing this? And the red bars are the fossil fuel-based power generation. Maybe we can discuss this later. Okay, next, please. I think I'll stop here. Okay, a few more slides. Just go through. These are the issues that I'm highlighting that we can discuss over the forum session after this. Next. Next, please. Next. Oh, okay. This is very important. Let's look at this. Look at that figure. That is a figure showing ranking of cheapest around 95 petrol in the world. And Malaysia, next please. Malaysia, this is 11 October. Malaysia ranked number 11. I was so surprised when I see this. And next please. However, we are not that rich to do that. In terms of oil production by country or net oil exporters, Malaysia is not that, say, very rich to give very cheap price of fuel. So I'm questioning what is happening here. Next, please. Yeah, what went wrong? You don't have enough fuel to give, but you are giving very, very, very cheap fuel, and you rank 11 in the world. So something that we need to think and discuss in the future about this. Okay, next, please. And yeah, the following pictures are showing the consequences. Because we make it too cheap, too affordable, people misuse the fuel. Okay, they use it for unnecessary things, where if you do it in the, for example, in the UK, it will be looked as some kind of a wastage. Okay, next, please. I believe this is the last slide. Next. Very sorry, I have to finish it off now. Yeah, this is the very last slide. I think I will end this presentation now. Sorry for taking your time. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Prof. Shahrin, for the presentation. Our next speaker and third speaker will be Prof. Abu Bakar Sani Sambo. Prof. Abu Bakar Sani Sambo is the chairman of the Nigerian Member Committee of the World Energy Council. He has served as the Director General of the Energy Commission of Nigeria, Vice Chancellor of Abu Bakar Tafawa Balewa University, Bauchi, and was named the Special Advisor to the President on Energy in 2011. He has published extensively on renewable energy. He has a 1979 first degree from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, and he obtained his PhD from University of Sussex, UK in Mechanical Engineering in 1983. Prof. Abu Bakar, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, moderator. Can I have next slide? Next slide. I decided to make this 15 minutes presentation in just 4 sections. In the introduction, I will discuss to bring things into context, and then I will quickly dovetail into the major problems bedeviling the sub-Saharan African countries in terms of electricity supply in the midst of plentiful energy resources. And then I will move straight into policy recommendations for solving the problem. And as usual, I'll round up the presentation under the conclusion. Next slide. Next slide. Well, actually, I look at this tropical issue, and I decided to concentrate between the two, between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. And you can see if that is done, we'll have 3 major blocks. On the left-hand side, we have the Latin America and the Caribbean. And looking at the documents of the International Energy Agency and the World Bank, I saw that electricity access for those batch of countries was 98.4. And then I look at Southeast Asian countries, it was 95.7, with Australia, of course, 100%, and India 96, Papua New Guinea, it was 63.4, Bangladesh 92, Pakistan 73. But Sub-Saharan Africa, my zone, is so far, is so down. The access is only 43%. And that's why I decided for this conference, I'm going to focus attention only on Sub-Saharan Africa. We are so far behind. We need to be carried along a little bit more. Next slide. Next slide. This is simply a satellite picture of the world at night. And I'm sure, gentlemen, you will understand why Sub-Saharan Africa is often described as a dark continent. This is what my presentation wants to solve, so that next time we'll see much more lights like you see around Malaysia and Indonesia and so on and so forth. Next slide. Next slide, please. Now, this issue that I've just shown, actually, if you look at the data in the International Energy Agency, you see that on the one hand, Sub-Saharan Africa makes up 15% of the population of the world, but it is the zone that is accounting for 80% of the population without electricity. This is very bad. And at the moment, about 680 million Sub-Saharan Africans have no electricity at all. And the IEA, in its last year's report, says that the sum of about 23.5 billion US dollars should be spent annually between 2021 and 2030 if Sub-Saharan Africa is to attain Sustainable Development Goal number 7, which we all know is for universal access to electricity with a doubling of energy efficiency and significant uptake of renewable energy. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Now, to highlight this issue of poor electricity access, I decided to put this slide again from IEA that shows I left North Africa, which is outside my zone, and South Africa, because you can see they have near 100% electricity access, but the bulk were so far down. Of course, there are some countries in Sub-Saharan Africa that are not doing too badly. If you look at Ghana, it's already about 85%. The same with Kenya, and Gabon is 92%. So at the World Energy Council, the African group, we are circulating the strategies of these countries that are doing well to those other countries that are not doing well, so they can learn and modify their strategies, which I will discuss in a minute. Next slide. Next slide. Aha. Now, a few years ago, when I was the vice chairman for the African region of the World Energy Council, we did a study of why the African countries are far behind. And we found 5 major group of reasons. And the first one is the lack of adequate energy infrastructure on the ground, along with its low local contents. And the second was inadequate indigenous human and manufacturing capacities. The third was inadequacy of funds, investment funds for development of the energy sector. And the fourth was inadequacy of appropriate energy policies, plans, laws, as well as regulatory frameworks. They are so weak. In some countries, unfortunately, they don't have proper energy documentations. And then the last one, of course, in some parlance, is even taken as the first: lack of good governance, political will at the highest level, and this issue of corruption. I think the last speaker mentioned it a little bit. Corruption is a major issue. And then this lack of confidence among African states that is showing, because, we have these power pools, North African, West African, South African power pools, so that electricity generated from one part of the continent could be transmitted to another part through mutual understanding. So when there's some disagreement, these power pools are not on ground as they are supposed to be. Next slide. Next slide. Well, the surprising thing is that while I just mentioned the issue of problems, but there's adequate resource. As I'm sure many of you already know, the African continent is well endowed with oil and gas, coal, hydropower, although many of us are pushing away from the polluting sources, but the renewables and even nuclear, they are in plentiful quantities. For example, while oil is north and the Gulf of Guinea, hydropower in Central and Eastern Africa, we have geothermal in East Africa, and solar is virtually all over. One other thing is that at the moment, about 30% of sub-Saharan Africa, they are now having commercial oil and gas. I'll come back to this before the end of my presentation. But the one that is ubiquitous as far as the continent is concerned is solar energy. It's available all over the continent, as I will show you. Next slide. Next slide. On the left-hand side, you have the solar radiation. I think there's no doubt the African zone, the sub-Saharan Africa in particular, is the largest in terms of endowment of solar energy. And we're pushing a lot to get our people to go into it. Of course, the issue of storage is one, but if we can mix up with wind and biomass, then the issue of, and a little bit of storage, then we are good to go. And then on the right-hand side, just like Suleiman has mentioned, we are also very highly endowed in terms of biomass and biofuels. Next slide. Next slide, please. This is the one that is putting all the oil and the wind and so on together to give complete picture. We do this even though most of us are promoting renewable energy. But when we go to our principals, the ministers, the government officials, they will not like to hear renewable alone. So for their purpose, we mix the two and we try to get them highlight the problems of focusing attention too much on the fossil fuels in view of the global warming and disaster that it will create if nothing is done. Next slide. Next slide. Can I have next slide, please? Next slide. This is the one that brings clearer even what I have been mentioning. And on this slide, I'm talking of the major recommendations policy-wise that we were shocked to discover that many African countries don't have these sets of guidelines that I'm putting forth. Now, the first thing, we should be able to have a scenario-based energy demand and supply projections. And the demand is the one to start with, and the tools are there in abundance. There are several. The IEA has some, and several commercial organizations, including IAEA for countries that are thinking of nuclear power. But IAEA doesn't say, yes, come, but they will teach you how to analyze your energy sector using all available resources, including renewable. One of the tools that in my country we are currently using is what is called 2050 Pathway Calculator, which we use. Next slide. which we got initially from the United Kingdom government, and we got the British High Commission to train about 100 Nigerians on how to use the tools. We adapted it to Nigerian situation, and were able to estimate reasonably accurately the energy requirement of transport industry and then household and services. And this will make me to quickly answer Shaharun Suleiman that why you saw Ethiopia and Nigeria having too much oil is not residential alone, is residential and services. And when you say services, you mean boarding school, prisons, hotels, and so on. The energy consumption looks similar to residential. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And the next, after doing the demand, is to do the supply projections. And in the supply projections, you now put a little bit more and consider all policy recommendations like the SDGs, like the nationally determined contributions for abatement of climate change, and so many other policy positions. Next slide. Then, of course, there's a new thinking that we're pushing many African countries to go, that is integrated resource planning. In essence, the IRPs is just to ensure that the resources match availability of the energy supplies, including imports where possible. And that is where I mentioned that the regional power pools have got to. It's not only for electricity, even for the gas we have, because gas is a little bit cleaner than coal and oil and diesel. Next slide. Next slide. And then on energy transition, again, like I just mentioned, that it is good that the African countries, on one hand, those of us that have oil, our government is telling us, why do we want to cut use of oil? Because we didn't cause the pollution. It was the developed countries that caused it through industrial and so on and so forth. But we're saying the world is a global village. The open space is all over the world, and it is better we curtail it from our own end now that we are growing. So I am glad to say, way back in 2013, African countries under the aegis of African Union listened to a presentation from UNFCCC, and they agreed climate change is also African problem. And that's why each African country has got its nationally determined contribution. My country has got two documents. Last July, the Federal Executive Council approved the second version, and now we are on the verge of going to Glasgow to look for those that are going to be funded conditionally with the support of developed countries. Those unconditionally is inside our own budget to fund and execute. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide, please. Mr. Moderator, you may have to add a minute or two for me because the slide movement is slow in my case. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Oh dear. These are some of the projects we are promoting in the African group. I like this one very much, 50 megawatt solar plant in Togo. Next one, next one, next one. Please, next slide. I want to go quickly. I have just 1 minute. Next slide. Oh, and this is one also I like very much, 580 megawatt compressed solar power in Morocco. We showcase it to African countries. Next one, please. Next one, next one. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide, please.
Prof,
Next slide.
we're seeing the next slide, but maybe there's some
Next slide. Oh. Next slide. Can I have next slide? Next slide. Moderator, I don't know what's happening.
Prof, can you hear me? Prof?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay.
We-
So I'll
we-
round up by saying
Okay,
that
okay.
sub-Saharan Africa, being the region of the world, indeed the region of the tropics, the zone of the tropics with the poorest electricity access rates, should adopt policies discussed in this presentation. And the country should move towards attaining goal 7 of the SDGs, adopting 2050 net zero agenda in line with their respective nationally determined contributions, which they all agreed at the level of African Union in 2013 under the heading of Agenda 2063. So they had a 50-year period. And then because of the preponderance of renewable energy in the 2050 agenda and the NDCs, the African countries are advised to adopt the beautiful benchmark financing tool of South Africa. That's the Renewable Energy Independent Power Procurement Program, REIP, which is working very well and which many other countries, including developed countries, are adopting. Now, with about 30% of sub-Saharan Africa being producers of commercial oil, the majority of them want to continue using gas in particular. They should all be well advised to look for other sources of revenue because we depend on sale of oil and gas for much of our budgetary requirements. And the last thing I want to mention is that we are strongly advising, and I think all forums like this one should say, while noting that some countries are continuing to use gas up to 2050, they should also come with adaptive measures through which the carbon dioxide emissions will be effectively captured, utilized under the circular carbon economy, and part of it stored underground, and also through plantation of forest in some of our countries that have land, a lot of land. Nigeria and many of the sub-Saharan Africa, there's land for plantations, and forestry plantations have been confirmed to be effective carbon sinks in many situations. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Prof. Abubakar. And sorry for the lag in the transition of the slides. Thank you for the speaker for sharing. This is a lot of information there, a lot of diversity and the presentation, which reflects the diversity in the tropical region. This is very interesting. So before I open for going for the open discussion, I will just select a couple of questions from the chat box. And I think the first question is to Prof. Yasuyuki. Prof. Yasuyuki, can you hear me?
I can hear.
So this is a question regarding the policies in Japan. The question says that what is the policy thrust of Japan towards attaining net zero carbon dioxide emission by 2050? Can you briefly just explain what are the policy in place now in Japan for the
As you said, so Japan government now has a schedule to that until 2050. So Japan want to reach to the 100% carbon neutral. Also, not only renewable energy, so many renewable energy is promoting. So offshore, top of the renewable now in Japan government promote offshore wind, and also hydrogen and solar and ammonia. Ammonia for the alternative the fossil. So now promoting ammonia and hydrogen the fossil for the power plant. So many renewable energy promoting, not only one. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Since we are talking about zero carbon vision 2050, which is I think very challenging
easy.
target, basically. Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you think this is a question open for discussion from the three speakers? Do you think that the current policies and the institutional frameworks are adequate for the tropical countries to achieve the net zero in 2050 and address the climate emergency? It is open for discussion. Maybe Prof. Shahrin can give some words on that.
A difficult question, actually, because different countries have different policies.
Yes.
I only know Malaysia and countries from where I got friends, yeah? for
Okay.
example, Thailand, Vietnam, and others. From my observation, most of the countries that I know do not have a very clear and strong policy. Actually, they may have something. The worst part is there is no publicity on it. I give you an example. When I asked around in my country, nobody really have heard about Paris Agreement. They just have heard something just loosely. Okay, my students, for example, when they write theses or write something, their ground of writing is Kyoto Protocol. I say Kyoto Protocol is obsolete already. We are now going to Paris Agreement, and that was like 2-3 years ago, even until now. So that is an example that policy is one thing, but promoting to the public on the awareness of the importance is something. That's all I can say for now. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Prof. Abu Bakar, of course, you mentioned a lot about the policies in Sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes.
What are your opinion?
It is actually possible, although it is a little bit difficult.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you very much. It is possible, actually, but it is difficult. The way things are going, following the 2015 agreement, which more than 190 countries have signed and ratified. Now, IEA drew our attention, the attention of the whole world, in fact, that if new plan is not adopted, then the issue will not be attained. And that's why the 2050 net zero came up. I think with commitment of the leaders of the various countries, because political will is key. And then so many developing countries are looking for a technology transfer and assistance from developed countries. So if developed countries provide something, I think many of the developing countries will throw away the emitting
countries with more advanced. SDG 17 is one of the also sustainable goals is on partnership in order to basically achieve one or address one SDG. We have to partnership, and this partnership countries, private, academic institution, NGOs, etc. What's your view, Prof. Yasuki, about this target? Is it achievable in the tropics, especially?
Oh, what target?
The target of zero emission by 2050.
Yeah. Yeah. So in Japan also target 2050 is a carbon neutral. Yeah. So actually promoting the offshore wind is a main project. Yeah.
In fact, every country, they have set some targets for, like, in 2025, what's the percentage of renewable energy to introduce. From some reports I read, it seems that based on the current rate of adoption, these targets, even for 2025, are not going to be achieved. In fact, for the Asian region, it seems that will be a gap of 6%, and this is without taking the account of the pandemic on the delay of adoption. So, in your opinion, how to close this gap between the renewable energy targets and its actual rate of adoption in the tropics? Because I see from the presentation just now that the resources are huge, immense resources in the tropics for renewable energy. The cost, as shown by Prof. Shaheen, some of them are very competitive.
Yeah.
So why there's no implementation or more accelerated target than the current targets, basically?
Yeah, so OTEC is large OTEC is very economically, but
Yes.
small OTEC is not economically.
Okay.
So at least 1 megawatt. Yeah. So small OTEC is very costly because we have to take deep sea water from the 600 meter or 1,000 meter depth. So intake tube is very costly. But if you use the deep sea water for the cooling building or agriculture or fishery, so intake tube is a public facilities.
Okay.
So only tap water or highway. So user will pay this cost. Actually, in Japan now, Kumejima private sector has paid the deep sea water cost. So if we want to promoting the blue economy or carbon neutral using ocean, so public facilities, so they have to promoting by government and UN. So this public facilities as intake tube, so we can create the job and water and energy and food, so decreasing cooling cost. So I need this roadmap. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Prof. Shaheen, have you any input on this in terms of closing the gap between the rate of adoption and the targets, basically?
Thanks, Prof. I think the root issue must be highlighted. Why are we having Paris Agreement in 2015? I think the answer is the greenhouse gases and the increase in the temperature, right?
Yeah.
We are seeing flood. We are seeing more, what you call that, hurricanes. We are seeing desert, more desert. Actually, these are bad things for our children and grandchildren. But today we are just thinking about ourselves. Where is the education? Where are we teaching our children or even our peers about the consequences? Frankly, as a layman, I know this thing by reading, okay? But if I'm just alone like that, nobody tell me, I will never know. So I think the public need to know. That will be the first driver. If the public are still sleeping, we're not going anywhere. So far, only government staff only are very busy, but people are not aware what they are doing. Yeah, that's all I can say. Thank you.
Yeah. Because I don't say, for example, if you look at solar energy, you show that the cost is almost similar as the cost of using fossil fuels. And of course, the solar source is there, it's very abundant. So why is not implemented on a large scale, and why we are not aggressive, basically? Why the governments or policy that are very aggressive towards adoption of solar energy, to wider adoption for solar energy? what are the other political issues, economical issues. Yeah.
Is it for me to answer? Yeah?
For any Prof. Abu Bakr,
I,
so is very
okay.
welcome
Thank
to.
you very much, moderator.
Yes.
Actually, I want to go back a little bit to say
Yes.
that the issue of the gap that you mentioned earlier,
Yes.
basically, number one issue is the huge financial resources that are needed. And
Okay.
in that regard, I know the World Bank and the regional banks, like in our case, African Development Bank, they are poised to provide soft loans to
Okay.
private sector in particular. And if that is tapped, that will go a long way. Then secondly, the African countries that are very poor, like the African Union is encouraging them to do, they should come together and have projects, large-scale projects of solar, of wind, and also of hydro that cuts across several countries, and so that the electricity generated can be shared in power pools. Because as we all know, the large-scale factor encourages is more cost effective at the end of the day. So these two
Yes.
policy positions, if they are pushed, I think will go a long way towards bridging the gap.
Thank you, Prof. I think you highlighted something interesting. The finance. Do you think that financial investment now is sufficient? The tropical countries. We just now we heard from Prof. Shaheen about the low in investment and R&D. Okay, this is
Actually,
one.
the
Yeah,
financial
yeah,
they are not up to requirements. We
yeah.
need to get our governments to do a lot more, and the governments, like I just finished saying,
Yes,
can now serve as guarantee to private sector. Government should also not relent in their efforts of getting the support of the strong countries who are in the forefront of this climate change matter. And if we tap on all this again, like I think one of the presenters mentioned, the comparative costs now is more in favor of renewable energy.
yes.
The cost is much lower. So I think we are good to go if we go in that direction. The policies, the laws, the regulations should all be also made very attractive. Of course, like you know, Germany and Spain encourage renewable electricity a lot by their feed-in tariffs. Of course, I know a number of sub-Saharan African
Yes,
countries have also adopted that as a means of encouraging the promotion of renewable energy for the economies.
yes. Yes, Prof. Shaheen mentioned about the R&D, the law. That's, I think, very, if you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yes, R&D is
Yeah,
essential. It
yes,
is absolutely necessary because there are a lot of situations where we can use our own available resources to develop,
because,
adapt technologies developed elsewhere to fit our own particular situations. And of course, where we cannot adopt much, we enter into agreements with the countries that develop them in the first place so that we produce in country. Producing in country is much better, even if it is assembly, than direct importation. And I'm sure this panel knows that the Africa as a whole has come up with African Free Trade Continental
yes,
Agreement that encourages one country to produce some materials and other countries no need to produce those some materials and to acquire them in much cheaper ways. So that wise, I think renewable energy will get much better bearing.
yeah. Prof. Shaheen, do you want to add something?
Yes, Prof. With regard to the research, renewable energy is beautiful. It's
Yeah,
plentiful. We can create policy, nice policy, but how to cascade it down until the end user is a big issue. For example, solar is only available during the daytime. Okay? At night, you have to have something else. So people talk about battery, but battery may be okay, going better, expensive, but going better. There must be something to make up for it. For example, hydro or maybe natural gas, but natural gas not in favor actually. maybe we can run biomass power plant. So different countries have different profile of energy, resources, and configuration. This is a big puzzle, country by country, and this is just one example on how we need research, and I think the list can be grown further. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Yes, so
Can I ask?
yes, please.
Yeah. So, Dr. Sulaiman, so tropic area is wind potential, some area weak. So as your presentation map, world map,
Yeah.
how about wind project in tropic area?
Yeah, I think Prof. Khairuddin also know Malaysia has got 2 experimental wind projects in Pulau Perhentian and another one in Pulau Layang-Layang. By now they are white elephants. Why? Because the tropics are located close to the equator. I heard, I'm not an expert in this, but I heard one presentation by an expert. He says this region, it has 2 winds canceling each other around the year. When you have strong wind sometime and at other time the wind will cancel, and as a result your net energy is like not so encouraging as compared to temperate countries like Japan and Europe. Your wind is always strong and quite consistent compared to the tropical. However, there are always, if you look back in the map, there are always some small places such as in Africa, but not big place that have quite strong wind. Otherwise, our failure was we thought that the wind was strong, but only for 3 months, and it's super strong, not strong, it's super strong.
Yeah. Super strong.
Yeah. And then after that, it died. Zero wind. Good for holiday, not longer for. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Prof. Abu Bakar, you raise your hand. Yes, please.
Actually, I want to say that in Africa, there are so many coastal areas where wind is already being utilized in a big way. I gave one slide in my presentation. Maybe it wasn't shown. I think the presenter jumped it. In Kenya, around like Turkana, almost 400 megawatts from one side. And in my country, Nigeria, we have a pilot project of government, 10 megawatts, and several other countries. So, Prof, in Africa, there are many areas where wind is being utilized, and there are plans for using wind on a big scale.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we have a question here on the floor. It's regarding the renewable is always discussed separately. I mean, the solar or wind. What is the view on renewable working together to maybe get to work in synergy, basically, when there is no sun, maybe there is wind, and when there's no wind, there's sun. So how can you a little bit discuss this issue on combining renewables, basically? So,
Okay. Yes. Well, I think that is the way to go. And in so many of the fora we meet with top government officials, that's exactly what we tell them. There's beautiful synergy. When the sun is very bright, usually we have calmer wind. And when the wind wind speeds are very high, usually the sun is not too bright. So there is good synergy. And then the third one we always recommend is biogas, biomass. That can be round the clock once you plan it very well. So we think if you bring the 3, you don't even need to think of other energy sources. It will be complete for any community. And in that wise, we strongly recommend this off-grid and mini-grid utilization, especially for the extreme locations and very hilly terrains.
Yeah, good. So
one other area, Mr. Moderator, that is not highlighted so much, of course, because of environmentalists, some environmentalists don't like it, is the nuclear power. There is no carbon dioxide emissions. It's just the disposal of the waste. IAEA is very strict in the disposal of waste. So I think that should be no problem. And I must tell you that many sub-Saharan African countries are thinking of the way of nuclear power. And if I'm right, a number of years ago at the IAEA, I saw some Malaysians and Indonesians also pushing for nuclear power there.
Yes.
Suleiman, I
Yeah,
think
good.
it wasn't you,
I
but
like
somebody
to.
looking like you was.
I just saw an article, not article, a report by the government
Yes.
of here 1 or 2 hours ago. They have cancelled the plan to use
Yes.
nuclear energy. Yeah. Not for Malaysia.
Okay.
Yeah, there's other issues coming with that. Although it's clean in terms of emissions, but there's other also aspects. Maybe the latest tsunami in Japan was open some, give some drawbacks, I think, to the energy. Very interesting. We have another few minutes, I think 4 or 5 minutes to maybe close this session. Before that, may I just ask the speaker just to give some concluding remarks, overall remarks, especially some recommendation, I think, for the tropics, how to go forward, how, especially how to accelerate the renewable energy adoption, because now the climate problem is an emergency. We are wasting a lot of time, I think. Not much investment is put, serious investment is put to adopt renewable energy, despite the abundance of the resources, despite the advance in technology that make the renewable energy more affordable. And despite that, we are still putting targets which are quite difficult, I think, to achieve if you are going to use the current rate of adoption. So just few remarks to conclude this session. We will start by Professor Abu Bakr.
Thank you very much. I think what we need to do in various zones of the tropics is to ensure we are focused in terms of policies, laws, and regulatory frameworks. Once we make them to be pro developing the energy sectors, that will be number one. And then number two, to look for resources through partnerships and support from developed countries, and also to look to start low-hanging fruits first, where especially we will get the younger generation. They can set up startups, and that means renewable energy, off-grid and mini-grids, and with that we'll begin to move ahead sequentially.
Thank you very much, Professor Abu Bakr. Professor Yasuyuki, any final close?
Yeah, thank you for giving me a chance, this opportunity. So on my presentation, I introduced OTEC.
Yes.
So OTEC is highest potential in tropics area in the world. So now many countries focus on the only solar or wind, but don't forget. Please remember, so tropics area has a huge potential, very larger than solar and wind. So, and OTEC is not only electricity. This is supplies water and create job and some production, agriculture and aquaculture, so on. So, and in this my presentation, I proposed so public facilities, other public facilities, so intake tube, deep sea water intake tube is needed for the tropical area. If you promoting the intake tube in the tropical area. Tropical area decrease electricity cost and food sustainability increasing. So many benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. Prof. Shaharin.
Yes, thank you. Finally, I got only 3 points to highlight
Yes.
here. First
Please.
is we must be responsible. Governments must be responsible. Stop the politics. If fossil fuel is not good, don't make it cheap. No,
Yes.
follow other countries, tax it so that it is users use it responsibly rather than waste it. I have a friend who took a ride at night for 30 minutes, 30 kilometers just to buy some special food because the fuel is cheap. Another one is education. 50 years, 2050, 2100, 2100 is far away from now. We need to educate everybody about the consequences of the greenhouse gases and the importance of the emergence of renewable energy.
Yes.
And my last point is 50 years, 100 years is very long time. Start to develop, don't wait, and don't rely too much on Japan or on other developed countries. No, we have to build our own, or if we are not strong, collaborate. Okay, thank you. Right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for three of you for sharing and for the lively discussion. It's energetic discussion as we are talking about energy, I think. So it was very, I enjoyed the session, and I would like to end with thanking, I think, the Academy of Science Malaysia and the Mahathir Science Award Foundation for organizing this event and also for making us a part of this panel discussion. And we hope that we will have a better future with more renewable energy and less CO2. I work a lot on CO2 capture and utilization, and I hope we can contribute as a researcher from the academic point of view, as well by collaborating with policy makers and investors and the society to make change and also to save the planet from this very critical situation. Thank you again, and I wish you a good evening and a good continuation of the conference. And with this, I close the session. Thank you very much, and take care and stay safe. Okay. Bye-bye.